First, we'd like to just welcome everyone to the Michelson Spark Grants Student Basic Needs Round webinar. We'll be talking today about our upcoming grant cycle, but before we do that, I'd just like to introduce myself and then throw it to my colleague to introduce himself. My name is Ryan Erickson-Kulas. I'm the Programs Director at the Michelson 20MM Foundation. I work with all of our initiatives, including our Student Basic Needs Initiative, and then also oversee the day-to-day operations of our Spark Grant program, which is our main grant-giving vehicle. I've been with the foundation for about 3 years now, and prior to working at 20MM, I worked in the nonprofit space for about 5.5 years. I'll throw it over to my colleague Miguel to introduce himself.
Buenos dias, good morning, buenas tardes, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Miguel Leon, a Senior Program Manager here at Michelson 20MM. I've been with the foundation for a little bit over 2 years now. Prior to that, was doing some international development work. And prior to that, spent about a decade at the City of Los Angeles Mayor's Office doing some youth development work throughout the city of LA. Happy that you're here with us. Looking forward to the conversation today.
All right, next slide, please. So this is just a quick overview of the agenda in terms of what we will be covering. First, I'll be giving you a bit of background about the Michelson 20MM Foundation, an overview of our history, what our other priority areas are outside of the Student Basic Needs Initiative that we have. Then we'll be discussing the Spark Grant Program, specifically why we use this funding vehicle, what we're looking to fund this particular funding cycle. We'll walk through what the application process looks like for individuals who are submitting proposals. We will highlight previous awardees to give you a sense of the type of work and projects that we typically fund. And then finally, we'll open it up for Q&A. If throughout the conversation today you do have a question, feel free to drop it into the Q&A feature. And that's where we'll be going at the end of today's presentation to answer questions. Next slide. The Michelson 20MM Foundation was founded just over a decade ago by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. Dr. Michelson is a retired orthopedic spinal surgeon who made his fortune in inventing medical devices and then patenting those devices. He has since retired from medicine and devotes himself to philanthropy. The Michelson 20MM Foundation is one of a handful of organizations under the Michelson Philanthropies umbrella. We are Dr. Michelson's higher education foundation. He also has the Michelson Medical Research Foundation and the Michelson Found Animals Foundation, which looks at animal welfare. Next slide. This is our mission. We're looking to accelerate progress towards a more just world. And we do that through investments in entrepreneurs, change makers, as well as policy. Our goal as an organization is to ensure that humanity reaches its full potential with equitable education and economic outcomes. Next slide. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how we do that. The first area of work that I'd like to discuss is the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property. As I mentioned, Dr. Michelson made his fortune in medical devices and inventing those. And so he is very passionate about bringing intellectual property education to the masses. So the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property has actually developed out an openly licensed curriculum where students, entrepreneurs, faculty can take these resources and learn how to capitalize on their intellectual property, similar to how Dr. Michelson did. Next slide. We also do some impact investing work, primarily in the ed tech space, where we look at for-profit companies who are doing work that are benefiting all students when it comes to affordability, equity, as well as a high quality educational experience. The main vehicle that we've utilized for that is the Michelson Runway, which is a partnership with Village Capital, where we do impact investing primarily with seed stage organizations. Next slide. So we have a variety of initiatives within our educational access and success work. The first that I'll just briefly mention is the Open Educational Resources Initiative. This looks to advance the proliferation and adoption of openly licensed instructional materials. These are materials within higher education that students do not have to pay a cost to access, and have been proven to be more effective, not only in lowering the cost of instructional materials and therefore lowering a barrier for students within higher education, but also increasing student success outcomes. The next initiative that I'll just briefly mention is our Smart Justice Initiative. This is where we look at the intersection of the criminal justice system and the higher education system and look to provide educational as well as vocational opportunities for people who have been involved with the justice system, either currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. And I'll let my colleague Miguel talk a little bit about our digital equity work.
Good morning again, everybody. Our Digital Equity Initiative advances cross-sectoral efforts to bridge the digital divide for post-secondary students in California. In that space, we've played a critical role in educating and informing our philanthropic community, as well as a broader community around the different facets of digital inequity. Our flagship virtual learning series, Connecting California, Solving the Digital Divide, has uplifted everything from the history and root causes of digital inequity, the transformative opportunity that the new presidential administration has to impact digital inequity, as well as the current policy landscape in our state. Next slide, please. I think we might have skipped a slide. There we go. Student Basic Needs. Our Student Basic Needs initiative seeks to increase persistence and graduation rates through systems change, technological innovations, research, and policy that helps students meet their basic needs. We've all heard the conversation around the real cost of college, the idea that non-tuition costs place students in positions of food insecurity, housing insecurity, facing multiple challenges. Through this work, we try and mitigate or eliminate those challenges so that students can both be students and survive. Next slide, please. So in terms of our Spark Grants initiative, our vision for it is to fund highly impactful initiatives that would not be possible if they needed to wait through a traditional grant decision timeline. So we try to be timely and quick in terms of our turnaround process. Our mission is to introduce an innovative just-in-time grant-making process to meet the urgent needs of organizations aligned with our focus areas, those initiatives that we just mentioned. In terms of our commitment, we make decisions on all applications within 15 business days of our call for proposals closing. Our timeline for this year's Student Basic Needs Spark Grant Round opens up August 23rd, 2021 and closes September 13th, 2021. In terms of eligibility, a little bit about that. The Spark Grant program is available to US-based nonprofits. And for this round of funding, we've decided to focus our impact on organizations that are doing work in California. Organizations whose work does not impact California will be ineligible for this opportunity. We will not be funding initiatives that would result in direct assistance to students during the Spark Grant round. A few examples of that: emergency student aid, laptops or hotspots, food and housing vouchers. We know that there is a tremendous need among students for direct support at this time, but we are leveraging our funding to affect broader systemic change with this Spark Grant round.
Great. Thank you, Miguel. And just another couple of quick notes about our Spark grant process. We also are open to educational institutions applying as well as nonprofits. And then to put kind of some perspective on what our cycles currently look like, the last student basic needs cycle that we did this past year, so in 2020, we received approximately 30 proposals. And generally, we look to fund 4 to 6 proposals per cycle. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what we look at when we evaluate proposals that are coming in and what the grant committee uses as a framework. Go ahead, next slide. So here are the 6 dimensions of evaluation: baseline criteria alignment, focus area alignment, potential impact of the grant, the measurability of the impact, the long-term organization sustainability, and then the ability of the project to scale. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So baseline criteria, our grants are up to $25,000. So we ask organizations to select an amount up to that. And really what we're looking to do is fund a self-contained milestone or a project. Types of this could be a new proof of concept, a pilot program, an inflection point where you need sort of a quick infusion of cash to get over the hump. We generally do not fund general operating expenses, rent, utilities, servers, etc. However, we do allow our funds to be utilized for staff time. So if you are allocating a portion of these funds towards staff time in terms of executing the project or executing the work, that is allowable. Another thing that I'll quickly mention is that we are open to having our dollars combined with other funding streams for a larger project. So if there is a large project that is above $25,000, but you feel like our funds could be utilized for a certain portion of that project, we would be open to that. We would just want to have a better sense of how our funds would be utilized, as well as what those other funding streams will look like. Next slide. Great, I'll let Miguel take it from here.
Thank you, Ryan. So in terms of our focus areas for this Student Basic Needs Spark Grant round, as we mentioned earlier, innovative efforts that help advance systemic solutions to support disproportionately impacted student populations better meet their basic needs. Efforts for applications on this focus area should focus on serving one or more of the following student population groups. We know that the student population is diverse and there are subgroups within that general population that require some additional support, extra attention, special attention in order for them to thrive and succeed. So if you work with any of these subpopulations listed, definitely encourage you to consider applying, as it is one of our focus areas for this round. Another focus area would be innovative efforts looking to scale solutions that tackle housing insecurity / homelessness among college students. We've heard in the space that there is some tremendous need for evaluation of some already existing programs. We've heard in the space that public-private partnerships are helping bridge that gap within this subject area. Definitely looking to see if folks apply that are working within that space and within that issue come through the pipeline. Next slide. For this round, we're also hoping to receive LOIs around efforts that address implementation challenges for the distribution of emergency student aid funding, including better insights on how institutions of higher learning manage and distribute aid dollars, and how these dollars impact students' retention, persistence, and graduation. We've come across within the student basic needs space the many challenges that schools encounter in managing and distributing emergency aid, as well as the challenges that students encounter in applying and having to wait for processes in order to receive dollars when emergencies are quite present in their everyday lives. So definitely looking to see if folks are out there doing some work on improving these processes. Another focus area is research on effective implementation of student basic needs centers and coordinators within the California community college system. Recently enacted budget at the state level allocated some dollars for the specific effort. We're really excited and happy about it, hoping to get in early on the process of making sure that those dollars are used effectively and efficiently. So if folks are considering working in that space, consider submitting an LOI for the student basic needs round. Another focus area for this round, innovative efforts focused on re-enrolling students who stopped out or dropped out during the COVID-19 pandemic due to basic needs challenges. These efforts should be able to scale across institutions and or higher education systems. We know that the impact of COVID has been tremendous on higher ed students. So looking at really creative, innovative and scalable solutions on how institutions are re-engaging folks that might have left their studies during the pandemic.
Great, thank you so much, Miguel. And I'll just add, I think that these past two slides are sort of the meat and potatoes of sort of what we are looking to fund. These are available on our website, and I'll share the link to the website shortly. But what we ask organizations to do is to select one or more of those focus areas that they would be submitting a project around. We're often asked, does it increase the likelihood of funding if we select more than one focus area? I would say not necessarily. We're really interested in making sure that the projects are effective in what they're seeking to do. So I would say, it's somewhat rare where a project hits, 2, 3, 4 of those 5 focus areas. But if you have any specific questions about those, you can of course reach out to us. And we'll share our emails at the end of this conversation. Again, also please feel free to put Q&A in the Q&A feature and we'll go through those at the end. So some of the other dimensions of evaluation that we're looking at is what is the impact of the grant? So in your LOI, we will ask you to identify what are the populations that are going to be served and what are the metrics that you are tracking to impact those populations. And we're looking to see, what is the best case scenario, what is the worst case scenario, evaluating how likely the project is to be successful, specifically when it comes to sort of existing budget versus grant allocation. Next slide. Excuse me. We're also looking again at how effective those proposed metrics are for success. And we're also very interested in the timeline of the project. I would say generally we seek to fund projects that will sort of come to fruition or have some sort of impact within about a year's time. The Spark Grant program is meant to be sort of a quick infusion of cash, a quick decision to get someone kind of over the hump. Generally, we see the timelines for projects ranging from 6 months to a year. From time to time, we will have projects that we fund that will stretch beyond that. I would say probably the high end of that is about an 18-month timeline for the project. So just to give you a sense of kind of what we funded and what we look to fund. Next slide, please. We also want to get a better sense of you as the organization. So we're interested in learning about the current team, who would be the leads on the project, why you as an organization are best equipped to make that happen. And then we also want to get a sense of what your current budget is, what your revenue streams are, what other type of grant funding that you've received. And the vast majority of this information will be collected if you advance to a full application. And I'll talk through kind of what that process looks like on our end. But when we're looking at sort of the organization information, that's instead of the second stage of the process. Next slide. And then lastly, we're always looking at how a project can scale. So we're really interested in sort of macro level projects that can impact across systems. Realizing that $25,000 is a limited amount of money, to make that happen, oftentimes we are in the position where we are seeding projects or seeding pilots that then have the capacity to grow. So maybe you are proving out a model at a local campus or at a local organization that you feel, once proven out, will be able to scale and grow with additional outside funding, et cetera. Next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about what our process looks like. So we will have the portal to receive LOIs open from August 23rd until September 13th. And you can go to the Spark Grants website right there. Maybe if one of my colleagues can drop that in the chat for everyone, that would be helpful as well. On the Spark Grant website currently, you won't see the submit a proposal button, but you will probably just in advance of August 23rd, and then that will be open on August 23rd. We do accept proposals up till 11:59 p.m. Pacific time on the 13th. For the LOI is sort of the letter of interest. It is the first thing that you will submit to us. Essentially, the heart of that is a 500-word abstract around your project and the impact that you're looking to make. Copies of both the LOI and the full application are actually available now on our Spark Grant website right at the top. So you should be able to download PDFs of those if you'd like to get a sense of what we are interested, what we are asking for and prepping for that August 23rd launch. Next slide. So we use a grant management platform called Submittable. So when you are logging in on the 23rd, you'll be asked to create an account. We do ask that you whitelist Submittable in your email client. And I will share a link in the chat in a second around how to do that. But essentially, we want to make sure that you get emails. And as you're filling out your LOI, there'll be instructions as to how to do that as well. We'll communicate with you through Submittable. Of course, you'll get email notifications when you get a message, but for us, it's just easier to have that all in one place. One thing that I will mention is that if you have technical issues with the platform, I'm probably not the person who's able to assist you with those. But you can reach out to support@submittable.com. If you all have questions about, the LOI or information that we're asking you or things like that, of course, you can always reach out to me. But for any kind of technical related questions, I'm not able to log in, I'm not getting a notification, something's not saving, the folks at Submittable are the best to reach out to. Next slide. Oh yeah, perfect. So this is our grant committee, and these are the folks who will be evaluating the proposals. Obviously, you've already met myself and Miguel. The other two members of our committee are our CEO, Phil Kim, and then our COO, Myra Lombera. Next slide. So a little bit about sort of what our evaluation process entails. We've talked about sort of the metrics and the rubric that we'll use for the evaluation, but what does that look like for you in the process? Well, after your LOI is submitted, the grant committee will do an initial assessment. Within about 6 business days, you'll get a notification as to whether or not you are moving forward in the process. If you advance forward, you will be asked to submit a full application. That full application, again, is available to download on our website. So if you're interested in taking a look at what that were to entail. With that full application, in addition to the questions that are listed, we're also going to ask specific questions based off of the committee's review of your LOI. And so, in addition to those stock questions, you'll get customized questions as well. After reviewing that full application, we will invite finalists to advance to a phone or most likely Zoom conversation to have a finalist phone call where we'll do a final evaluation, get some final details. But our whole goal is to be notifying organizations whether or not they have been awarded a grant within 15 business days of the call for proposals closing. So within 3 weeks of that close date in September. In terms of numbers and things like that, again, I shared the past few grant cycles we've done, we've received approximately 30 proposals or so. Generally, we advance about 20 to 25% of those proposals, maybe a bit higher. Actually, the last cycle we did was higher. It was probably closer to 40 forward to an application stage. And generally, we seek to fund 4 to 6 grants per cycle. Go ahead, next slide. This is just a visual representation of what the process kind of looks like in case you're a visual learning. We receive your LOI, we review, we would invite you to submit a full application, a finalist call, and then a final decision. Next slide. Great. So I'll turn it over to my colleague Miguel, who will highlight a bit of the past student basic needs grantees. These aren't all encompassing, but these are projects that we feel fit well within the ethos of what we're trying to do with the Spark Grant program.
Hello again. Just wanted to give folks a few examples of partners from previous rounds. We can go to the next slide. So you get a sense of what successful applications ended up looking like and projects ended up looking like. On the research side, we partnered with the Institute for College Access and Success, TICAS. In terms of their project, we supported research on how the pandemic has impacted students' ability to afford college. They conducted a survey among 875 students from across all of California higher education sectors. And the study revealed pandemic-related budget changes, non-tuition costs in particular, and their impact, how that has impacted students' academic plans, and how it's made it more difficult for many students to even stay enrolled in school. TICAS then hosted a webinar presenting these findings and the traction that those findings receive either with policymakers within the nonprofit sector or at educational institutions, and how that helps inform programming in each of those institutions. We find it super valuable. So even though it's one research project, it can grow legs and have sort of a broader impact. And that sort of alludes to what Ryan was referring to earlier around scalability. Next slide, please. Previous round, we partnered with Cal State Long Beach, specifically their Pregnant and Parenting Student Initiative. We helped support the development of a best practice model for how to make campuses family friendly. CSULB conducted a landscape analysis of CSU campuses doing this sort of work with pregnant and parenting students. They included a couple of local community colleges as well. And based on those findings, they pieced together a manual on how to best structure your family-friendly program and or solutions on campus. And they also will be developing an ally training, both of which we're hoping to scale across all 23 CSU campuses in partnership with the CSU Chancellor's Office. One program that started on one campus that has had some tremendous success and has developed some best practices that can then be shared across an entire system. We're really excited about this effort because it works with one of the subpopulations that we mentioned earlier, pregnant and parenting students, and is really an effort that can gain traction and impact not just one campus, but multiple campuses within this system. Next slide, please. The Southern California College Access Network, SoCalCan, another partner of ours from the previous Spark Grants, Student Basic Needs Spark Grant round. We helped establish the Let's Go to College California Student Fellowship. The fellowship includes paid opportunities for student leaders from priority regions in California. The fellows were trained to raise awareness of SNAP benefits among their peers. They were trained to educate and inform the general public regarding challenges that students are facing and as it relates to meeting their basic needs. Always with an emphasis on those non-tuition costs that place students on precarious positions and situations. Student-led, for students, by students, uplifting the student voice and their experience as it relates to student basic needs. We thought it was extremely powerful to send that message and have students lead the education and awareness efforts across the state. I know the fellows were meeting with some of their policymakers as well, educating and informing them about all the challenges that they were facing. So 3 highly impactful partners and projects, one on the research front, one on the systems change front, and one on the student voice front, education and awareness front. We hope that these examples help sort of help you brainstorm potentially impactful projects as you seek to potentially apply for this Spark Grant round.
Great, thanks Miguel. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we missed a slide, but that's okay. There we go. So wanted to just quickly highlight some other awardees that are not within our student basic needs initiative, but I think again do a good job of encapsulating the spirit of what we are looking to fund with the Spark Grant program. Next slide. So the first organization is Education Trust West, and they are actually an organization that we have funded twice through our Spark Grant program. Their first Spark Grant was back in 2019, which is actually when our program started, and they created a California Digital Financial Aid Awareness Toolkit. At the time, recently in California, legislation had been passed that all seniors needed to receive education around what financial aid forms were, how to fill out a FAFSA, how to fill out a California DREAM Act application. And so EdTrust West realized that faculty, staff on the ground really needed resources in order to do that. And so they did a survey to find best practices in the field and created a resource that could be utilized to drive up the numbers of individuals who are completing financial aid applications. Then last year, we actually had a funding cycle specifically devoted to COVID. EdTrust West did a survey of California higher education students related to the resources and support that they were receiving from their institution as students were transitioning to a remote learning environment. The grant also supported a digital map that looked at the higher education system's response to the pandemic and showed digital access issues at various institutions, as well as those that were doing things well, with the idea being that a holistic sense of what is occurring in the space will allow policy change to move forward. Next slide. US Public Interest Research Group, or USPIRG, is a Spark grantee through our Open Educational Resources Initiative. They created a report looking at a new trend that the textbook industry had shifted towards, which is called automatic textbook billing or inclusive access. It's where students are essentially automatically opted into a fee to pay for their instructional materials. That report revealed a lot of troubling practices when it came to those contracts and identified some recommendations for protective measures that can be added so that students as consumers are protected. This report has spawned numerous pieces of legislation here in California, in Texas, elsewhere, and has helped students throughout the country sort of advocate for a voice within automatic textbook billing contract negotiations. Next slide. We gave a grant to UCI to fund their UCI Lifted program. This is the first example of a higher education program in a prison through the University of California system. The idea being that UCI will build out and document the work that they are doing, and then their model will serve as an example for others within the UC system and hopefully beyond to have a tier 1 research institution involved in teaching in a prison setting. This project is a great example of one where our funds were, one of many to get this program off the ground. And in fact, they're still continuing to fundraise. But our funds were one of the earliest funds and sort of sparked additional fundraising and additional interest within the program. Next slide. And then the last grant that I'll mention is also through our Smart Justice Initiative. And that is the grant that we gave to the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, as well as the foundation. It was a combined grant. This grant looked to produce training materials and modules for a statewide training of the over 250 faculty who are teaching in a prison setting. So faculty applied for the funds and were awarded them and are using the funds to develop out those resources with the idea that they will be shared statewide at various convenings across the state. Again, another example where our funds were part of a larger pot of money, but used to advance sort of a whole systematic change. Next slide. Great. So that kind of does it for our presentation. I know we have about 20 minutes or so for questions. Again, if you do have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. That'll be the first place that I go look for them. And if you have specific questions or if you want to connect after this call, Miguel and my emails are there. Please feel free to reach out. Oftentimes, we're very happy to provide some feedback around an idea that you are contemplating. So, if you're thinking, hey, I really want to, submit a project around X, but I'm not quite sure if it's aligned, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to provide some feedback and say, that might not be, the thing that we are interested in right now, and then sort of saves you from some time in terms of submitting an LOI, or maybe it is, yes, we are interested in that. Please make sure that you include, piece of information X, Y, and Z, so that we can have a better sense of the work. So yeah, we'll answer some Q&As right now.
I have them up, Ryan. I can.
Oh, perfect.
Set them up for us. I think right off the bat, the first question that was asked was if the slides will be made available. Yes, we will be sending a follow-up email post webinar, so keep an eye out for that. It'll include a link to our page as well as a link to these slides and a recording of today's conversation. One of the questions, Ryan, was, can you give examples of OER? I believe that might be in relation to the broader description of our focus areas for the foundation.
Yeah, so OER, or Open Educational Resources, are textbooks that exist generally with a Creative Commons license and are freely available, generally digitally, and very low cost print. The best example that I can point to quickly would be OpenStax. So if you take a look at what OpenStax does, you'll get a good sense of what those materials are. Again, that is not the focus of this funding cycle, but it is one of our areas of work that we do as a foundation.
Next one up is, are current grantees eligible to reapply? Hello, Debbie Roucher from JBay. Good to see you on here. Short answer, yes. Do you want to elaborate on that, Ryan?
Yeah, no, definitely, eligible, I would encourage you, Debbie, or any other current or former grantees, if you have a sense of kind of what you're looking to do, to reach out to us, and we're happy to sort of talk a little bit more in depthly, but we are certainly open to that.
Awesome. Another question. Are indirect program costs permitted as part of the request?
Yes. So we cap our indirect costs at 10% of the grant overall.
Great. Are formerly incarcerated or justice impacted individuals included in this as well? I think they might be alluding to the subpopulations that were listed in the bullet points for one of our focus areas. They are, but this isn't necessarily the round that focuses on justice impacted folks. That one might be coming a little bit later this year. Ryan, do you have more details on that?
Yes, so our Smart Justice Initiative will be having a funding cycle in November. So if you aren't already signed up to our Spark grant mailing list or our Smart Justice mailing list, definitely do those, and you can do that on our website. But those will be announced most likely sometime in October, but the funding cycle will be in November. And I would agree with Miguel. I think if you're really focused on that particular population, it might be worth waiting until that. But of course, always interested in learning more about organizations doing work in the space. So feel free to reach out to me, and I can route you to the member of our team who leads our Smart Justice work.
Question, would paying for a subscription for a tech solution for our students to access be eligible for funding? Interesting question. I think one of the EdTech solutions that we've come across is around emergency student aid. I think if it is a project that can prove out the efficiency and effectiveness of said solution and scale and have the potential to scale that partnership across a system of higher ed, I would frame it around that. And sort of set it up under that structure. Happy to chat about that more, but I don't know in terms of a subscription itself, Ryan, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say generally, if it is paying the subscription for 1 year or whatever, at our campus to impact students, that's typically not the type of work we look to fund, mainly because we don't see that as super sustainable. A question that would be raised around that would be, what would happen, when the grant funds are used up to be able to, continue that program. Again, happy to talk more specifics offline. Feel free to email us, but that would be kind of my general thought.
Another question, we just received a 1-year contract partnering with a school district to provide education and case management for homeless high school youth, targeting high school graduation. Could this qualify as a viable project? There seems to be a focus on college age youth in this cycle, so wanted to verify.
Yeah, it looks like there's a similar question just below it, which is just to be super clear, your focus is only on higher education. And I would say, yeah, we are primarily focused on higher education. So generally, students who have already made that transition into college, maybe they have stopped out or dropped out for whatever reason. We have in the past done some work around, youth transitioning in. But Miguel, I'd be curious from your perspective, if there's kind of a preference within the student basic needs work.
Yeah, I think in general, our focus has been higher ed students. I mean, there's been a focus in the space on the non-tuition costs of college, on the student populations that we focus on. So I'd say, if it's connectable to sort of their next step in higher ed, happy to chat with you about it and see if there's a there. Feel free to reach out, but generally speaking, higher ed focus for sure. And another one, could the funds pay for salaries for student employees?
Yes, absolutely. Funds can be used for salaries.
And is there a rotating funding per org per year, or can an org receive repeat funding year after year?
Yeah, so great question. We have definitely given funding to organizations multiple years in a row. Again, sort of how our funding is structured is we are pretty project based. So oftentimes, like Ed Trust West was a great example. We gave them funding for a couple of years in a row, but there was on two very different projects. Generally, how our funding is structured at this time is we don't do sort of ongoing, general operating grants. But if you're a current grantee or a current partner, again, we'd love to chat offline about kind of what you're thinking for this particular funding cycle.
Great. There's a question about having Dr. Michelson speak to college students. Definitely reach out to us. We can coordinate and see if there is a possibility for that. Send myself and Ryan an email. We'll coordinate with our operations team and our leadership here at the foundation. Do you match or support grants already funded in an organization? Not too sure, not too clear on that one, Ryan, but maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I would say we wouldn't necessarily call our funds matching funds, but if there is a project, let's say that is $50,000 and you have secured $25,000, like, and it is a good fit for what we are looking to do, we would definitely be open to utilizing our funds for that remaining $25,000. So hopefully that kind of clarifies the question, but again, feel free to reach out to us with kind of some specifics.
How long will we have to complete a full application if selected? I'm assuming they're referring after the LOI and we pass them on to a full application.
Yep. So we work with the organization around that. I would say generally it is about a week or so. But we kind of talk with the organization and ask them what works for their time frame.
Are small grassroots organizations eligible for funding? Most definitely. In terms of eligibility, you have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And if you're part of an educational institution, for the most part, they've applied through like their foundations and have that 501c3 status. But definitely encourage you to apply if you are under that category as a 501c3. Do you ever open grant opportunities to IHEs outside of California?
Yeah. So for I guess full disclosure, we in our early rounds of the Spark grant process did sort of open the call up to organizations that were doing work outside of California. In those earlier rounds, we would receive 100 plus, 200 plus proposals. And with the limited grant dollars that we have, which was 5, 6 grants, a little over 100,000 or 150,000. We saw that there was a lot of energy being spent on the part of nonprofits to submit LOIs, and kind of the ratio didn't work out well. And so that's why we've kind of restricted our focus to California. We're also very interested in seeding change and seeding impact with students throughout the state that we are in currently. I think that there probably is a time down the line where we will be interested in working with organizations that are doing work outside California, but just not currently.
Question on students that dropped out across institutions. Does that include elementary, junior high, and high schools? Right now, no. Focus is on higher ed, students that dropped out of college. There was a mention of 15% of funds that can be allocated to those who work to carry out the project. I also heard 10%. Can you please clarify if it's 10 or 15%? Thank you.
Yes, sorry if I misspoke. I think that this was in regards to indirect costs, which I would consider things like benefits, or oftentimes, especially at institutions of higher education, there's sort of a, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but a processing fee where X percentage, is given to the school's foundation for processing and handling those funds. So those indirect costs are capped at 10%. Again, if you have a specific question, feel free to reach out to us on email and we can clarify that.
There's a question on, it was mentioned that educational institutions can apply. Would we need to apply with our campus foundation's 501c3 status, or can we apply as a standalone on behalf of our campus? We've seen a couple of different ways in which institutions have applied. We've seen them partner with a nonprofit to carry out their work. We've seen them apply through their school's foundation. I think the Foundation for California Community Colleges is a good example of that. I think that decision, we leave it up to you all in terms of strategically what would be the best approach for applying, and also for who ultimately will be carrying out the work. So long as, again, it's a 501c3.
Yep, and then, yeah, I would echo that. And I guess if you're thinking about this in terms of like, what should I put in the LOI? Like, which organization should I put, whether it be the foundation or the actual school? We're not too worried about that early on in the process. I think we're more interested in sort of the project, the work that will be done, the people who are doing the work on the ground. If we get later on in the process, say into the application stage or into the finalist conversation, we will talk to y'all and get a better sense of, okay, if you were awarded funds, would you want to route it through the foundation? Would you want to route it through the school, et cetera, et cetera?
And we have one around, let's see, there is a LGBTQIA+ project from Amor para Todos, the Saving Lives Now project, which has 5 components that all can lead to systematic change among school districts throughout the state of California, to help be a part of saving the lives of LGBTQIA+ youth. The focus is with elementary schools for earlier intervention to lead to a larger impact within systematic change. Would you all recommend focusing on one of the 5 projects, or all 5? All can be life-saving. If it is focused on K-12, again, this round is for higher ed students, students in college or university. So if the project does some work at that level, definitely feel free to reach out to us and we can chat about your thoughts around which of those components would be part of your LOI. Yeah, happy to discuss that. And typically, how long does an org have to spend the funds?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we kind of leave it up to the organization to determine. I would say generally we ask for timelines in the 6 to 12 month range, but there have been instances where because of the project, an 18-month timeline made sense. I would say that is probably the high end of the timeline that we generally see.
I think that was it, right?
Awesome. Well, really appreciate everyone joining today. Hopefully this gave you all a sense of the type of work that we're looking to fund, how our process generally works. We will be sending out the slides as well as a video recording of this within the next 24 to 48 hours. So if you've registered, you will receive that. It will also be listed on our Spark Grant webpage. As a reminder, copies of the LOI and the application are available on the Spark Grant webpage right now. And of course, you can always email us. We're very willing to have conversations, emails, et cetera, kind of talking through potential projects as individuals look to seek whether they will apply or not. I just saw one question come in. So is Spark Grants just for higher education? Yes, it is. We don't really, as an organization, work in the K-12 space. So sorry about that. But thank you all for attending today, and we look forward to reviewing proposals as they come in starting August 23rd. Hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.